What represents the difference between a heroic vigilante and a deranged serial killer? It actually comes down to a single narrative device, the code. If you don't give your protagonist a rigid set of rules that justifies their brutality, your readers aren't going to root for them. They're going to be terrified of them. My name is Jason Hamilton. I previously worked for 3 years at Kindlepreneur, helping teach authors how to write and market their books. But mostly, I'm just a guy who loves deconstructing stories. To make this video, I didn't just guess what worked. I analyzed high-performing bestsellers scene by scene, using AI to identify the recurring patterns in books that readers actually buy. We found several key tropes that are absolutely essential to the vigilante justice thriller, and if you miss them, your story falls apart. So let's start with the absolute DNA of your story, and that is the vigilante anti-hero, which isn't just a character type. They are a response to a broken world. These characters operate outside the legal framework because they possess a fundamental distrust of the system, which is very important for stories these days. Whether the authorities are corrupt, lazy, or just inept, your hero steps in as the necessary evil to deliver the results where the law fails. But here is the danger zone. If your hero goes around killing everyone that they want without rhyme or reason, you lose the audience. And to make this resonate, you must equip your protagonist with a rigid personal code. This psychological contract justifies their brutality against the bad guys while strictly sparing the innocents. It's what separates the Punisher from a random spree shooter. You also need to balance their lone wolf nature with relatability. Usually this comes from some kind of deep personal loss that acts as their catalyst. And you have to make the reader ask themselves, if I were in this position, would I cross that line too? And don't forget the consequences. Show the police pursuits causing uneasy alliances or the media scrutiny painting them as a criminal. Use their internal monologue to just prove to the reader that for them, justice is a higher calling than the law. Without that moral grayness, the story kind of falls flat. The next big trope that we see in vigilante crime thrillers is a corrupt or ineffective authority. Now, for that anti-hero to exist, you need to break the world around them. If the police were actually competent, your hero wouldn't need to get out of bed. And this is the core function of the corrupt or ineffective authority trope. You have to establish early on that the official systems, like the police, the courts, the government, are barriers to justice, not facilitators of it. This is the only way to justify your protagonist's choice to pick up a gun and handle it themselves. However, you don't need every cop to be on the villain's payroll. While a corrupt chief shielding a crime ring works, don't underestimate the power of simple bureaucratic incompetence. Maybe the detective actively wants to help, but is swimming in red tape. Maybe evidence goes missing due to chronic underfunding. Layer these types of corruption to make sure the world feels real. Start with small failures like ignored leads or dismissed theories, then escalate to active obstruction. By the time the climax hits, the reader needs to believe that the system is essentially broken beyond repair, because if there is any hope left in the system, there would be no need for the vigilante. So with the next trope, we know that the hero is angry at the system, but why? This brings us to the inciting incident. Normal people don't just decide to break the law. They have to be pushed, and usually that push comes from a place of profound grief. You need to show the death or injury of a loved one, but more importantly, you need to show the system failing to bring justice to that situation. And that is the key. If the police successfully solve the murder, your story is over before it begins. So position this loss early in the first act, and don't bury it. Let the reader see the body, hear the final plea, or witness the corruption that lets the bad guy walk free. This provides the raw, emotional realism that this genre demands. But be careful. Don't just use this for shock value. It needs to be essentially the engine that drives every decision that your character makes. Use their grief, their denial, their rage, the depression, all of that to justify their escalation into violence. And ultimately make sure that this quest for vengeance challenges them. Does it honor the memory of the lost, or does it just stain the hero's soul? All right, next trope. Speaking of personal loss, we have to talk about a rather controversial trope, and you've probably heard of the stuffing into the fridge. This involves harming or killing a loved one to create that visceral inciting incident or midpoint escalation. The goal is to shatter the protagonist's normal life and fuel their transition into a lone wolf state. But here's where most authors fail. They treat the victim as a prop, so please don't do that. To make this resonate, you need to give the victim agency. They need passions, flaws, and goals that intersect with the investigation. And if they are killed while investigating a lead that the protagonist warned them against, their death becomes a tragic consequence of the narrative, not just random cruelty. This applies to everyone. You can fridge a male mentor, a sibling, or a partner. The gender doesn't even matter, but the impact does. Ensure that this event fundamentally reshapes your hero's methods. If the death doesn't force the hero to cross a moral line they wouldn't have crossed otherwise, and you're just using it as shock value, and readers don't like that. Now, I've kind of skirted around this trope already, but essentially this one is called the lone wolf. Your hero has been broken by loss and failed by the system, and now they shut down. The lone wolf protagonist operates by themselves. They reject alliances, sabotage partnerships, and rely solely on their own specific set of skills to get the job done. You have to root this behavior in their backstory. Usually this stems from a profound betrayal or a past failure where relying on a team got someone killed, that sort of thing. To them, trust is more of a luxury that justice can't afford. This offers a distinct storytelling advantage because it allows for swift, uncompromised action. Your hero doesn't have to wait for a warrant or a vote, but it also creates a massive vulnerability. If your hero gets shot, there is no backup coming to save them, and there's no extraction team. So you need to lean into that. Show them stitching up their own wounds in a grimy motel sink. Show the exhaustion of having to keep watch while they sleep. If you don't show the cost of this isolation, you miss the point of the trope entirely. You need to make the reader fear for them precisely because they are alone. Next, we get extralegal investigation and violence. So since they are alone, they can't exactly flash a badge. While the police are stuck waiting for warrants, your hero is kicking down the door. This trope drives your protagonist's actions, allowing them to bypass legal channels and get immediate results. I recommend integrating this into escalating plot beats. In the first act, start small with subtle breaches like unauthorized surveillance or hacking private records. But as the stakes rise, so must the intensity of the methods. And by the midpoint, you should be escalating to coercion, heavy intimidation, or even lethal force. But whatever you do, don't write consequence-free violence. You need to show the double-edged nature of these tactics. If your hero utilizes a brutal interrogation to get the antagonist's location, there must be a cost. Maybe the violence leads to sloppy intel, or perhaps it draws the attention of law enforcement, creating a sort of hunted status for your hero. Show the visceral reality of the violence, the adrenaline, the physical toll, the metallic tang of blood. Force the reader to wrestle with the question, do the ends actually justify the means? And by the way, if you'd like to learn more about how to use tropes like this combined with AI as an author-led productivity tool to help you write 12+ books a year easily, perhaps more, and without compromising your creativity or ethics, check out the Story Hacker Gold group linked in the description. You get my full guides for this genre as well as a whole bunch of others, so I hope to see you in there. All right, going along with the lone wolf trope is the drifter protagonist trope. Sometimes the best way to handle the loneliness is to just keep moving. The drifter is a wandering loner with zero ties to the community. They arrive, they uncover the rot, they clean house, and then they leave. And this is effectively because it removes the need for extensive setup. Your hero doesn't need to wait for a warrant or worry about what their family thinks. Their rootlessness is their greatest strength, allowing them to evade capture and emotional entanglements. But does that mean that they are just a robot with a gun? Absolutely not. To make this resonate, you must give them some kind of ghost to carry. And I don't mean an actual ghost. Usually this is a past failure where the justice system fails them, forces them into a life of perpetual wandering, etc. as a form of atonement. Reveal it slowly through terse flashbacks or reluctant confessions during an uneven alliance. Use artifacts like a scarred weapon or a faded photograph to hint at the life that they left behind. Your goal here is to balance their ruthlessness with compassion. They fight for the oppressed because they know what it's like to be failed by the system, but ultimately they cannot stay. All right, the next trope is one of my favorites. It's a small town with a dark secret. So where does the drifter land? Often it's in this small town with a dark secret. This setting is more than just a backdrop. It's actually the antagonist itself in a sense. The core function of this trope is to isolate your hero within a community that looks idyllic on the surface with things like rolling hills, annual festivals, tight-knit diners, but is actually rotting from the inside out. You need to establish early on that the town's charm is actually just a mask. The residents aren't just friendly neighbors, they are a wall of silence protecting a systemic evil. Economic desperation or fear of a local elite family usually drives this kind of silence. Layer in the unease. Use sensory details to hint at the decay beneath the polish. Maybe the infrastructure is crumbling on the edge of the town, or the locals go silent the moment an outsider asks the wrong question. If the local sheriff is burying the evidence of the inciting murder, your hero has no choice but to go outside the law. But peel back the layers slowly. Start with a rumor, escalate to a threat, and finally, reveal that the corruption goes all the way to the top. Even a lone wolf needs a little help sometimes, and that's when we get the mentor or ally trope. But most authors treat this character as a sidekick, and so please don't do that. In a vigilante justice thriller, the mentor isn't just there to help. They are essentially the lever you use to test your protagonist's soul. Sure, they provide the practical stuff like hacking or stitching wounds, but their real purpose is to challenge the code. You need to decide early on, is this person a moral anchor trying to pull your hero back from the brink, or are they a dark teacher showing the hero just how brutal they need to be to survive? I prefer placing these characters right at the friction point of the system. Think of the jaded analyst or the ex-criminal. Force your protagonist to rely on the mentor for survival, but make them resent the lectures on morality. This creates a beautiful conflict between efficiency and humanity. Usually the mentor represents exactly what the hero is fighting not to become. Alright, the next trope is the uneasy alliance. Sometimes that ally I mentioned isn't a mentor but an obstacle. The uneasy alliance pairs your chaos-bringing vigilante with a by-the-book law enforcement officer. And this is a little bit more than the buddy cop dynamic. It's more of a conversation about the nature of justice. In the beginning, these two must clash. Show the officer stopping an interrogation because it lacks a warrant. Show the vigilante mocking the officer for swimming in red tape while people are dying. This works because eventually the system fails the officer as well. To make this arc satisfy the reader, you have to break the officer's faith in the rules. Maybe evidence goes missing due to corruption, or the antagonist targets the officer's family personally. And I'm using the word officer here, but it could be whoever your ally is. And so that ends up being the turning point. The officer shouldn't become a full-blown vigilante, but they must become pragmatic enough to provide intel while kind of looking the other way. By the climax, they should be using a blend of legitimate legal pressure and extra-legal brute force to finally take the villain down. The next trope is foreshadowing of the antagonist's power. You can't have a hero without a villain. In this genre, the hero is fighting a force that the law is powerless to stop. You need to establish early on that the antagonist possesses reach, resources, and influence that permeate the protagonist's world. Don't have the villain give a speech about their power in chapter 1. Instead, layer these hints subtly. Use environmental details like unexplained high-level security at a crime scene, or locals who are simply too terrified to even whisper the villain's name. Show the barriers that the protagonist faces, like tampering evidence inside the precinct. But be careful not to overpower your villain too soon, because if they are truly omniscient from page 1, it creates plot holes. Start with peripheral impacts, like bureaucratic walls or hushed rumors, and escalate to direct attacks on the hero's operation. The next trope is called the torture technician. When the antagonist needs to get their hands dirty, they call the torture technician. This isn't just a thug with a pair of pliers, this is a professional. The torture technician typically appears when the stakes need to escalate drastically. They are the specialists called in by the antagonist to extract information. I find this trope works best when the character is terrifyingly mundane. Make them detached, make them treat the infliction of pain as a boring 9-to-5 job. And be careful with the gore. You don't need gallons of blood to make this effective. Focus instead on the sensory details, the sound of the tools, the sterile environment, or the psychological dread of the victim. This exists to challenge your vigilante's worldview. Since your hero operates in the gray areas of violence, use the technician to show them the dark end of that spectrum. As the villain's power is revealed, you need to shift the narrative from a routine pursuit into a desperate game of survival. You can't just have your hero fighting the same level of goons for 300 pages. In the first act, keep it to low-level thugs. But by the midpoint, the villain should be actively sabotaging the vigilante's operations, like burning down their safe houses or cutting off resources. And in the finale, you must target the hero's inner circle. This leads us to personalization. The antagonist cannot remain a distant overlord. They must become an intimate predator. Have the villain uncover your hero's identity through a subtle clue, assuming that their identity is hidden in the first place. And once the mask is off, the villain should retaliate by attacking vulnerabilities like kidnapping a relative or framing the hero for a crime that mirrors their original trauma. My favorite way to heighten this tension is to have the villain use the hero's own methods against them. If your vigilante uses fear, have the villain do the exact same thing to the hero's allies. And this kind of blurs the moral lines and forces a raw, visceral showdown. This kind of leads to the next trope, which is is a cat and mouse game. This isn't just a chase scene, it is an intellectual chess match played with bullets. You typically put your vigilante against an antagonist with vastly superior resources, but the hero doesn't just run away. You must structure the conflict as a series of alternating counter moves. So start small, like the villain hacks the hero's phone, and then escalate from there. Have the antagonist personalize the attacks. They shouldn't just chase the hero, they should taunt them. Have the villain exploit the hero's lone wolf status or mock the memory of the loved one that they lost. Every time the hero thinks that they are the hunter, reveal that they have actually been walking into a trap. Use this dynamic to strip away your protagonist's anonymity layer by layer until the climax becomes inevitable. And if you really want to burn your hero's safety net, use the framed for the crime trope. You look your protagonist up for a major crime, like a murder or a heist, and this forces them completely outside the legal system. This turns the story into a stern chase. Your hero must now evade the very authorities that they might have once served, all while trying to investigate the real villain. I recommend placing this turn in the middle of your story to ramp up the stakes. The evidence also needs to look airtight to the police. For instance, have the antagonist stick the hero's prints on the murder weapon, and this highlights the ineffective authority trope we talked about earlier. The cops are too lazy or corrupt to dig deeper, so the hero has to do the dirty work. Even if they prove their innocence, the victory should feel hollow. The system failed them. It believed the lie. Finally, let's talk about how the hero wins. This brings us to Czechov's gun. This isn't just a fancy literary term, it's a rule about narrative economy. In a high-stakes genre like this, everything needs to earn its place on the page using limited resources. If you draw attention to a specific object or a skill or a piece of information in the first act, it absolutely must play a significant role by the third act. It doesn't have to be an actual gun, of course. It could be a unique gadget on a thug's keychain, a specific chemical knowledge that the hero possesses, or even a seemingly throwaway line about a building's architecture. Introduce this element casually during the setup. Mask it as character building so that the reader doesn't immediately flag it as a plot device. Then echo it in the middle of your book, and then when the climax hits, your hero is out of options and they fire the gun, essentially. Use that element to turn the table on the villain. Because the setup was properly laid, the solution will feel inevitable rather than convenient. Understanding these tropes is the difference between writing a book that feels disjointed and writing a thriller that readers actually can't put down. If you really want to master this genre, I've actually published a full book that goes into much more depth on the vigilante justice crime thriller. You can buy that book on its own, but you can also get it at no extra charge along with many other book genre analyses by joining the Story Hacker Gold group down below. In that group, we go through my entire process to go from having nothing to having your book in hand, all with the tools you need to market it, and we even get into how AI can help you enhance your process without diminishing your creativity or compromising your ethics. If that sounds like something you need, check out the link in the description. And I'll see you in the next video.